Hey there, Ron Sullivan, your online hitting consultant. This is Turner, and a lot of talk about him these days, and trying to sneak into the All-Star game, and rightfully so. Really nice approach. And the reason why I'm doing this lab today on Turner is just something he does is very unorthodox. And then I'll point out some things with the lower half, but something he does with his upper half is really different. And one of the things I like to do is I like to go in the cage and try to feel and try to emulate what certain players are doing, and obviously I fall short. I'm 44, and I lack the athleticism and probably the talent to pull this off. But nonetheless, I'm trying to feel and not just come in here and say, look at him scapulating and all that stuff, but trying to let you know that I'm trying to feel exactly what I'm talking about and so forth. All right, so let's talk about the unorthodox approach. One of the things that I've realized about Turner, his upper half is so relaxed. It's almost it's just soft. He's not trying to load things back. You know, these days, and even I focus a lot on torque and getting players to have the proper amount of separation and stuff like that. Turner does not worry about that. In fact, his upper half is almost passive. And what I mean by passive is, you'll see when he gets to the ground here, you can see that normally what you'll see, and look, I'm not trying to use me as a as a perfect guide, but you'll see that if I had the letters on my shirt, the team name, they'd normally be in line like this, right? You can see how Turner's is almost straight in line here. What it shows me is not necessarily that he's pulling off the ball. He's just not really focused on getting his upper half torqued up, right, and creating a lot of separation. And one of the reasons I know that, based on, as I was studying his swing, I'm going to show you something that's extremely different. And this is what really drew me. Is like, what the heck is he feeling here? If you look at his, I'm going to draw, most of these guys have a box grip. Right? Box grip is whenever the little knuckles line up with the big knuckles on top of the hand. But basically, I'll show you. So that line is through the little knuckles and big knuckles on his bottom hand, and this line's through his little knuckles and big knuckles right in the middle of that, right? You see how that's not lined up at all, and that's not completely different. But this is a little strange in that his top hand's not even engaging the back completely. It's like it's just on and along for the ride. And one of the other things that I can point out that really show that is, if you notice his wrist right here is completely flat through his knuckles. And normally what you'll see is that this will be pinched in a little bit as we try to get the top hand arm behind the bat. He's just basically got it along for the ride. And so what this does, I think, for Turner, right, is it kind of gives him a feeling of his backside and his upper half staying passive, right, that he's not focused on getting his body torqued up as much as he's just trying to stay behind the barrel. Now, I know this is a term that a lot of people won't be very familiar with, but I am a firm believer that this position right here is ultimately what players are trying to get to. We talk a lot these days about getting deep, and we talk a lot, I don't, but because I work with kids that have no problem with dropping the barrel behind them. This is what we're trying to fight them against, is not to drop the barrel behind them. But I think that this position tells the whole story. Is that really, when we talk about the rotational principles and where power comes from and all that, I think what we miss in that discussion a lot of times is we're not really challenging kids to get the knob of the bat or the hands into a position where we're going to get the leverage that we need, right, for the barrel to drive through the ball hard. And so what I mean by that is most players are dragging the barrel back here and they never get their hands inside, right? And so really, doesn't it make sense that to create a lot of power, and if our body's going to rotate, as we say, right? If there are any rotational principles at all, if the barrel is chasing the rotation of a body, in other words, that once he starts to swing, the knob of the bat is still back here, right? And his body's turning like a beast around. Well, it's not, it's just going to drag the bat. But if I can get the knob of the bat in my hands in front of that rotation, right, now I'm behind it. Just like if you're going to throw a punch, you wouldn't want to, well, I guess you could throw a windmill at somebody and land it, and that would be great. And that's usually the kind of hitting you see in a game. It's the same approach, is that their body spins and then their hand and arm catches up, right? Well, that's obviously not what Turner's trying to do here, as he is working into the ground. Look how passive his hands are as he's dropping in. His upper half's doing nothing. It's here tracking the ball, right? And because he lands, he takes, this is one of the shortest moves that you can possibly get because of how low his handset is here. This is extremely unorthodox. You probably have to look back to Wade Box to see something similar to this, but you can see like his hands are, I'll draw a line through the middle of his hands right here. That's under his armpit. That's really hard to do. In fact, I was trying to do it over here on the left, and I started there, and then I naturally load my hands up a little bit. I just can't help it. And believe me, I tried. And so this approach allows him, you see how his top hand arm stays behind the hands? Right? I think this has everything to do with, I think he's making obviously a nice move to the inside, but because he has no resistance with that backside at all, it allows him to move the knob of the bat to the inside relatively easy, or for him, very easy, right? So that's what a passive approach with your upper half could do. It's not something I necessarily teach, but it's definitely something to think about, of just keeping your upper half. And I think Josh Donaldson said it in one of his videos. He's just trying to, his upper half was nice and quiet, right? He was trying to just feel nice and loose on his upper half so that when we do unload the swing, the barrel has a lot of life. Right? The more tension we create, and sometimes we do this unintentionally, is we start trying to create more torque, meaning separation between the upper half and lower half, right? We try to create a little bit more separation here so that we can have a little bit more whip of the barrel through the zone. But a lot of times players are just creating a tremendous amount of resistance. The more they try to keep all that rubber band or whatever. Now, I'm not saying that we don't want to do that. I'm just saying that some players are just doing it wrong because they're trying so hard to create this separation. Players like Turner not really focused on that, right? I mean, his hands are just along for the ride, and you can see, boom, that move to the inside. That's really simple, folks. That's as easy as it gets. And so not a bad idea to emulate. My advice is if you want to emulate anything from Turner, it's that looseness of his upper half. He's just really not trying to twist his body up, right? He's not trying to get his hands up over his head or anything like that. He's just got his hands along for the ride, and he's going to let the ground, right, help him unload the swing to get his hands to the inside and so forth. There's definitely the knob has to be pulled to the inside to get to this point. So what does that? The hands do. But what we teach at the online academy is making sure that that is a coordinated sequence, right? We're not trying to have players throw their hands at the ball in that language or anything like that. We're trying to get the players to feel the correct move to the inside so that the rotation of the body and those principles are going to make sense. It doesn't make sense if your hands are chasing the rotation of your body. Love the leg kick. I don't teach it to a lot of really young players that are learning the game for obvious reasons, I would think. But it's all the rage these days. Leg kick, leg kick. So if you're playing at home, right, and you want to do the leg kick, and how can you let it work for you? Lifting your knee up does not create power. Striding really far does not create power. Having the proper tensioning and tightening in certain positions is going to create that hip release that you're looking for, is a product of these things that I'm going to show you. Okay, so whenever we're at our highest point of the leg kick, what you need to focus on, if you're doing the leg kick and you don't feel like you're getting any power from it, I'm going to show you an angle that I think that you got to start focusing on. It's this angle right here with the front leg as we're coming in. So many young players, when they're doing the leg kick, they'll just step out really far with their front leg. What we're trying to feel here, right, when we get to our highest point, is the inside of our leg, right? The inside of the knee, the inside of this, and the inside of the foot, right? The longer I can keep that closed, the more power I'm going to have when I get to the ground, right? So what a lot of people are focusing on these days is this position. We got the front foot is open. That's going to create power because the hips can turn more. No, that's not. Kids all over the planet are striding and opening their foot up. That's not what creates the power. And doing a leg kicking, opening your foot up is not what creates the power. It's how long you can maintain that tension, right? That tension that I'm talking about is keeping the inside of your leg closed for as long as you can, right? Closed, and then right before we get to the ground, you'll see that that's a natural stepping process. He's not going to step closed when he does this. Now, the difference you're going to see in me and Turner is going to be that he's a much better athlete than I am. and I'm 44. But what I do on the tee is I start reaching my foot to get to a certain point, right? He's not doing that, and that's why you're not going to see some of the same effect with the lower half. You'll see the same sequence, but you'll see a little sloppier of a move, and that he lands with flexion in his knee, right? You see here through the thigh bone and then through the whatever that bone is, right? There's flexion when he lands, right? I don't have as much because that little move right here where I stretch again to try to get my foot in a position where I feel more comfortable hitting a ball on a tee. Okay, so you want to make sure that you're not doing that stretch that I'm doing there, because that ultimately will take out some of your ground force, right? And the straighter my leg is in the front when I land, the less power I'm going to create with it. But you can see here that we're basically using the same sequence. Now, one of the things, so yes, keep that, when you do this, try to feel that your front leg is staying closed for as long as possible. The other thing that I see young players doing when they're doing a leg kick is, a lot of the focus these days is on this back foot. You see how his back foot's going to drag, and look, we teach at the online academy a certain release mechanism. We're trying to get players to feel something, especially if they're bug squishers. We're trying to get them to feel a little bit more freedom for this backside to release through the ball. But one of the things that I see more and more of is we've become so anti-bug squishing that we think that the fix to that is dragging your back leg, right? And so what I see more and more of these days, and it's praised for whatever reason, is you'll see a before and after of a 10-year-old kid dragging his back leg underneath him. And the back leg's response should always be a response to, right, this release mechanism. The backside's releasing correctly. You can see that with his back foot, right? He's not just turning on his back hip. You can see he's just right when he gets to the ground, boom, that releases. And what will dictate how far the foot will drag and so forth will be how wide this is. Some players are crazy wide, and so if you notice, the guys that are showing, go on YouTube and search "is squishing bug the good idea," and then they'll show you. I guarantee they'll show you an example of a guy where his foot's going 12 inches in the direction of the ball dragging, or it's off the ground completely. One of the other things I want you to notice is how far that player is striding out, right? Is really far. So Bryce Harper is used as an example all the time. If you look at Bryce Harper nowadays, his back foot doesn't do what it used to do to the extreme because he's not striding out as far. Same thing with Josh Donaldson. That backside is always a response to leverage, right, and width. If this is really far and your back knee, and you're a good hitter and your back knee has to get through, then you better believe if your back foot is here and your front foot is here, that back foot is going to move farther, right? But if you have young players at home that aren't striding that far and they're still dragging their back foot, it's wrong. I don't care how many shares that online hitting group got, or how many people say, "Oh, you got it. This is just like the pros." It is not like the pros. I promise you, if you're trying to drag your back leg underneath you, that is a power loss. That is not a place where power will come from if you're not using it correctly. All right, hey, love doing this stuff, guys. Let me know your opinions, and let me know if you have any questions. Ron Sullivan, your online hitting consultant. Thanks.